When I walk through a landscape that I have created, I usually flash back on a lot of the people who have visited the spot. And I've actually been known to change landscapes after the fact because I admired somebody's response to it and I understood the depth of how they reacted to it. What people don't learn to do and they're never taught to is actually to see, actually to be present in a landscape, for example. We're so many generations now removed from the land. This is why this place is such a good example of depth psychology in action.
When we came here, the place was just decimated. There was nothing here. I mean, the land was barren. The trees were starting to come down. There were hardly any plants at all. We were in a desert-like situation. We had very little money. And Marshall came, looked at it as an artist would. The whole thing was for Marshall a canvas, frankly. And we started with little seeds. We put in little milk cups and planted them. They grew a couple inches, and then we started transplanting onto the landscape. And now we look around and we just, are amazed and thankful for what's grown and what's happened here.
This is an ecological oasis. When we first came here, there was 82 oak trees and a couple of dozen eucalyptus and a bunch of scrub, but mostly it was bare ground and stumps. And so everything you see around here was planted. Several bioregions come together here on this coast. And so I tried to create as many habitats for Mediterranean, the adapted creatures as possible. This has been a constant experimental station in that respect. If you've seen the farm, it has all kinds of small blocks of planting, interplanted with flowers. All of these things that create diversity, which is the secret of any ecological success story, is diversity. When I was a kid, I spent days wandering the forest in New Hampshire and in the pastures and just sneaking over people's yards and stealing apples. I'm a great example of a well-educated gardener, a peasant. In grade school, even into high school, I wanted to be a Jesuit priest. And I actually went 6 months to a Jesuit seminary in Washington, D.C. And I like girls, and so I left. But I've always been in service. I went through and I started out as a geologist, and I became an English major, and then I became a geographer. I was born to be a teacher, and I loved the university when I taught there. I just didn't want to be in the game anymore. And so I basically created my own curriculum of reading the land, living on the land, and so on. Without getting into my background, I was pretty much a nerd in my head, and I didn't know what it was meant to be human. I was an alcoholic who was hitting bottom in 1988 when I came here. I associate my time with Pacifica with the healing from that disease. I discovered in the course of becoming a gardener that if I put my hands in the ground, there's something in the soil, microorganisms or whatever, and some kind of a spiritual effect of that. You cannot be depressed if you're working in the ground.
Marshall's really one of the smartest guys and knows more about stuff than anybody else on the campus. And I come to realize that what Marshall does on the grounds is the enactment of what Hillman does in the psychology. Hillman talks a lot in his Anima Mundi essay of the aesthetic response, an aesthetic reflex that we have, that it's an engaged, embodied sense-making that has to do with what Marshall does when he creates spaces. Hillman talks about imagination as first a receptivity to whatever's going on, and then a responding in an appropriate way. So he has this incredible knowledge base so that when he pays attention to a particular site, he knows how to bring it alive. This is the testimony to it, everything around us.
Truth be told, there have been many elders at Pacifica. There's been elders in our intellectual work, icons in the field, people that are known worldwide. And yet, there's another person that stands out just as vividly, and that's Marshall Chrostowski. And the reason he does is because he brings to the place and to the work something that nobody else can. He brings a voice, and more than a voice, a direct experience and a knowledge base, a wisdom that reaches back not hundreds of years, but thousands of years, into understanding how the cycles of nature work, how they work us personally, how they work among themselves, and how we as people need to now find our sense of empathy and sympathy with nature's wisdom.
You know, our ideas are really important, but unless they can be brought into real life, they don't really matter. Doing things that are in line with the mission, serving the soul of the world. And that's one of the things that Marshall has always held Pacifica's feet to the fire about. If you're going to do something, it has to be done the right way, authentically. You know, the way that matches the place, the way that accentuates what makes it beautiful, the way that you can be proud of.
Was it Pacifica that changed me, or did I change Pacifica? And I have a feeling that it was a mutual process. I love the adulation across it, but I don't need it. People said, aren't you going to miss it? And I said, no, I've got a whole new world out there to do. I'm only 79. I got a lot of years yet. And what I've created is always there. Landscaping is actually gardening with a heart, that the gardens are more than me. And that if it wasn't for the people interacting in the gardens, it would just be another plain old place with a lot of plants. Being happy is not as important as being content. That happiness is an ephemeral thing like anger, but contentment is a sense of that everything is in its place. Everything is as it should be, whether it's good or bad. It's just the way it is. I mean, I don't know how many times I've heard people say, well, you know, this is what I want to do in life, or this is what I had wanted to do in life, and it didn't happen, and damn it, I'm really frustrated by that. And I can tell you that nothing ever worked out the way I ever figured it would ever work out. It's what you make of it.